talk about, the gentle art of leadership. And I think leadership is really about identifying areas that need to be addressed and then addressing them and how we do it. And one of my favorite sayings is there's no limit to what you can accomplish if you don't care who gets the credit.
Yes.
And I believe in that. I think, how do we figure out how we serve? How do we reach further? How do we do more? And how do we keep our finger on the pulse of what the needs are so we can be the very best at what we do? So that's a big focus. But I left that meeting having no idea how I was going to do that. I literally came out, and I'd like to say that I'm a business genius and I thought up this whole thing, but that's not it at all. And I continue to say this is calling. I continue to see God's hand in the work that we do, and I tried to do my best to listen and to follow. And I knew we would of course have overhead and administrative costs and everything else, but we had to figure out another way to pay for it. And the private social partnership, by bringing in the business community along with the human services community, working together was one of those really aha moments. You go like, that's what we need.
Hey everybody, I'm here with my great friend Craig Secher from Realities for Children. We are going to turn back the time to 30 years ago when he founded this organization that is doing huge things to impact children in need in Larimer County. We're going to talk about his journey, his vision, his struggles, and his ultimate commitment to serve children in need. Check it out. Craig Secher. Dude, welcome.
Yeah, thanks for having me here.
Coming out.
I'm excited to be here. It's great to see you. Hanging out a lot of years and finally get to do some fun on the podcast.
We were just talking. It's been 2 decades.
Yeah, better part of, I'm sure. Yeah, so it's been a blessing to have you and Emily part of our life and our work, and this is exciting what you're doing here, and I'm excited to be able to share a little bit more about what we're doing.
Well, and for us to get an hour is rare, just because you and I mean, we meet once a year usually. We'll see each other at events. You're always at events. Yeah. With what you're doing. And now it's just cool to sit down and catch up on just life and what you're doing and where Realities is going. And I want to dig into all that, man.
Yeah, right on. No, I'm excited about it.
How did you get here to where you are today? We were just talking about you have like this full head of like gray hair, distinguished, wise business leader. You run an amazing organization. And I guess
I had to bring the gray hair in.
I had to bring it in.
Yeah,
Dude.
okay.
All right.
Well,
but it looks good.
We'll accept
it looks good.
Thanks.
But I mean, you got into child protection 3 decades ago, and Realities is celebrating 25 years.
Actually, we're be 29 years.
Coming up on 30.
Yeah, it'll be 30 next year.
So like, what was just the beginning of that journey? You know, take us through that. Take us back.
Yeah, that is a big. Yeah, so I've been working in child protection services for over 34 years here in Larimer County. The background is my background is psychology, human services. That's my education and that side of it. So I came out to Colorado with that intention of working in this field. I immediately started working as a counselor therapist with a residential facility in Loveland area back then that was working with all children with extreme trauma, sexual assault survivors under the age of 13. In a residential setting, and so I was a counselor there for a while. So I worked with the younger children and saw those issues. I became a chemical addictions counselor. I worked with chemically dependent delinquent teenagers in a Fort Collins residential facility as well. So I was really working with all ages, and of course, those children that I worked with were all survivors of domestic violence and had that background, and most of them are in trouble with the law as well. So we were doing parole supervision and that sort of thing with those kids. And in each of those locations, I really saw kids continuing to slip through the cracks. We just didn't have the resources that we needed as a community for all of these children. We saw that, we just didn't have the funding. We didn't have the services. And a lot of times we didn't even have the awareness in the community of the problem. So in working with both those populations and figuring we can do better, I wanted to kind of move my way up the food chain and services. And then I became a child protection investigator. So I worked for Larimer County doing investigations of child abuse reports. And that was a little bit more outside of my area. I wanted to work more on the heuristic and the healing and the support sides of the kids. So I transitioned out of investigations to ongoing case management. And so that was where I started working with children in child protection that were all facing different situations of physical, sexual abuse, neglect, those sorts of circumstances. And it was really kind of through those years of work that it really helped to identify some of the greatest areas of need.
So when was the idea of Realities? You know, everybody kind of has that origin story of like, were you sitting in a coffee shop? Was there a specific case or scenario that came up, or do you recall back to that? Hey, like we're doing this. Here's this idea, because it's super unique.
Yeah,
what you do.
No, I really do remember it very clearly because, like I said, I'd kind of intentionally gone into child protection services to see if I could be at the top of the food chain in a sense of, for lack of a better term, to enact change. To what can we do so we don't have children slipping through the cracks? And the great process there was once a month we would have these things in the department called debriefings. And we would all get together, all the caseworkers, and we'd sit around and we identify all the issues, the caseloads that we were dealing with, to, lack of funding for certain circumstances and what would be valuable and all of these sorts of things. And I thought, wow, this is great. We're really at a place of, at the spear's head of how do we fix these issues? And then a month went by and we had another debriefing and we sat down and we identified all of the areas that we need to work on. I said, okay, I think we've done that. And then the next month came and the same thing happened. And I was like, what are we doing here? I want to move forward. And so I went to my supervisor and said, I think we've identified really well what some of the challenges are. I think we need to start looking at how do we address them? How do we make sure kids aren't slipping through the cracks and are being provided for? And he said, well, that's not really what those meetings are for. And he explained to me really that, and anyone that's familiar with child protection services or works in this field knows this is probably one of the most difficult, thankless, heartbreaking jobs you can imagine. You're dealing with the worst cases of humanity on humanity, crimes against persons. You're dealing with some of the most vulnerable victims in our community. It is to any therapists or caseworkers that are listening, thank you for what you do. It is tremendous work and tremendously necessary, but the burnout rate is very, very high. People that come into child protection and they find out pretty quickly this isn't a good place for them mentally, physically, for their family. It can take a really big toll. What's
the longevity of somebody in that position?
Turnover is very high.
Is it? Okay.
I couldn't give you a specific time, but we that's part of the issues and some of the challenges we do is we have children that go through multiple caseworkers while they're involved, just simply because of the turnover rates. We see that in a lot of the child protection or youth and family services programs in the community. These are hard, thankless jobs, but absolutely necessary. And so my supervisor shared with me as I was approaching him on this. He said, "Well, the purpose of these meetings is to be cathartic. We want basically that people get this off their chests so that they can move forward and do their job." And that really didn't sit well with me. And this kind of goes into the aha moment of realities for children. I went to the next meeting and I said, look, if complaining about the same thing every month is cathartic and it gets it off your chest and it allows you to move forward and do the great hard work that we're doing every day, I think that's fantastic. But this is my last meeting. I said, the way I see it, we have three options. Coming in complaining about the same issues without the hope of change has the opposite effect on me. That does not get it off my chest. That gets me fired up. It gets me frustrated.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. And so I said, the way I see it, we have three options. We accept the limitations of the job we have. We accept them. And we go out there and we do the absolute best with what we have to provide for these children and families, through the county. We don't accept the limitations of those jobs, and we come, get a job with you. Go find something that does speak to us, and that's where that turnover happens. We have to find something else outside of that. Or three, and this is what spoke to my heart, was we need to find a solution to the limitations. And so that was really the moment that God call in my life was, okay, then, if not you, who? Who's going to do that? Who is going to do it? I've seen what the circumstances are. I understand how the government works. I understand what we're doing, and I think they're doing amazing work. But there's more to be done, and we need to answer that question. How can we address these issues and see a positive change? And that was really the start of Realities for Children. How we can see that no child is forgotten.
So I know this is a God calling for you. I know you're a man of faith. We have deep discussions about our faith. Was it a real loud knocking from God? Was it a nudging? Did you just know He was in it? Because I talk to a lot of people that are called, to do something, and just kind of talk through that maybe a little bit more. Was it real loud? Was it just?
Yeah, and I'm not one of, especially prior to that moment, wasn't a person that would throw around the word calling or even
Yeah.
those are very uncomfortable words to say, and they just didn't feel right. But this would be the perfect example of that. Was, if you don't want to use it from a belief side system of a calling, it was that aha moment, that snap of, holy cow! I had always kind of assumed there was a place that this was going to be addressed. Somebody was going to handle these issues. We're not going to continue to see children slip through the cracks. We're going to make sure that they're provided for. We just have to find who's doing that. Yeah. And once you're, in what I would consider, at least in our county, in our community, at the position that I was in, there was really nowhere else to go to say, okay, if we're not fixing this, if we're not addressing this at this level, then who is? And so I think that was the call. Is like, okay, I'm not willing to accept these other two, but I'm willing to say, what is the solution? How do we make sure that no child is forgotten? And that was really started the journey of Realities for Children.
I love that. And what were those ways that kiddos were falling through the cracks? What was the lack of resources, if you could maybe categorize those?
Absolutely, and it's extensive. It's a challenge we face even today with the emergency services we provide every day out of Realities for Children. But it can be funding for short-term emergency placement. It can be services, clothing items. It can be medical care. It really, we just saw time and time again, there was needs for children that were not being met. And some of them sound very severe. You're talking about medical care. I remember, one of our earlier cases, even helping with scar removal from a child. And those things just weren't going to be covered in some of the resources that we have. Where C-plan funds, victims compensation, Medicaid are either too readily exhausted or just not available for one reason or another. There has to be an emergency resource because not every need fits into the system's buckets of what they have available. And I can't say it enough what a great job I think our county does and what our country does. But to believe that it's all being done and it's being handled somewhere else it's not healthy. We need to look at the facts and we need to go, how do we do better? I really do believe, the old saying, you do the best you can until you know better, and then when you know better, do better.
Do better.
Yeah.
So take me back to those early days. Like, what were the first couple of things that you did? Just first big steps. Because we're talking, close to 30 years later. You've served tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands, right?
Yeah.
Of kids with millions and millions of dollars of resources. Granted wishes to children. Just the amazing things that you guys do, right? And that all started somewhere. So what were those early days of just getting in the trenches?
It's a great question because as you spoke to, the model is unique, and I'll kind of speak to how the second God moment or aha moment that led to that. And so I walked out of that meeting going, okay, so how do we address the issues? How do we enact change? And so I was still working at the department and had worked with quite a few great organizations at that time that provided services to the kids on my caseload and that sort of thing. So I reached out to virtually all the executive directors or leaders of those different organizations and scheduled a meeting. And we sat down and said, okay, this is what I want to do. I want to create a resource that makes sure that no child is forgotten. And of course, they all understand that. They see the limitations. They understood it. And it was a really interesting meeting. It was 11. This is where I realized a lot of other issues that we're facing as a community, as a culture. But we sat down with 11 executive directors, arguably some of the most fearless leaders that care about our community and are putting their money where their mouth is. They're putting their blood, sweat, and tears there. These are the frontline folks that, and even today, I still consider to be, the heroes in our community that are literally doing what I've done, which is dedicating their life to helping children and families in need. And so we sat around this table, and I said, "This is what I want to do. I want to create a resource that meets all the unmet needs for abused and at-risk children, so there's no child slipping through the cracks. And I'd like your ideas on what those things are. Where do you see the greatest areas of need that would really help you, better provide for these kids?" And it was a great meeting. We identified our initial 4 core services. Realities for Children Charities provides 6 services for children in our community. We call our core services. Of course, each of those I can share a little bit more on. But at that time, this group of leaders identified 4 core services. And specifically, one was community education and awareness. We need our community to be aware that we have a problem with child abuse before we find ways that people can get involved. So child abuse and neglect is sadly here. And I think even 30 years ago, it was even more kind of this best kept secret, that it didn't happen in our community. That happened somewhere else.
And just to interject is there's a number you share. I mean, there's how many cases per day, per year? I mean, at least nowadays, 2024.
So last year,
staggering.
Last year, just in Larimer County, so we're not talking northern Colorado, including Weld County, just in Larimer County, last year alone, there were 6,795 new reports and referrals of child abuse in Larimer County. So that's not the existing cases, the open cases, the children that literally we are working with till they age out of the system or reunify or terminate parental rights. That's just last year.
So like 20 per day? You're doing that math?
Yeah,
right?
it's significant. Yeah, so the issues there. Community awareness was something back then that didn't exist, and it's not like nonprofits had a great marketing budget that they were getting the message out. And so I said, okay, we can help with community awareness, and it's not just about the problems, but then how do people get involved, inviting them to be a part of that. The second thing they said is, look, we work with these kids every single day, and we want to have. We want them to be children. We're providing the services that they need, but just because you're a 5-year-old sexual assault survivor doesn't mean you're not a 5-year-old. And we want children to be children. So one of the things, if we could provide youth activities, so Realities for Children's second core service was youth activities for children. We still do these every single month. I think we had over 1,500 children attend our youth activities last year. In fact, we just had a youth activity last night. We had them down at the masks at the museum, and they got to paint and connect. And it's just a really great opportunities. Again, just allowing a child to be a child during difficult times. The third core services they wanted community outreach support. So it kind of tied into community awareness, helping them with their messaging and their fundraising events and that sort of thing. And we still do that today. But the number one thing that we do and that we provide is emergency services. And so that was the one we knew going in we needed to have. We wanted to create a county-wide safety net. So not a quick, easy alternative, but when all of the resources are exhausted, when C-Plan funds, victims' compensation, Medicaid, even agency resources are gone, there is a place to turn to. So the answer isn't no, sorry, and that child slips through the cracks, but we really have that safety net. And I understood the importance of having all of the organizations working together, because we're not really creating a safety net if some children have access to it and some don't.
Is the paint or roof on your home or business starting to look a little shabby? If so, reach out to one of our sponsors, M&D Painting and Roofing. M&D Painting and Roofing is a full-service residential and commercial painting and roofing contractor in northern Colorado. And full disclosure, I'm the M in M&D. Check them out at mdepainting.com. Are you a small business trying to navigate all of the landscape of digital marketing and don't know where to go? Reach out to one of our sponsors, Imprint Digital. They are the go-to source for all things digital marketing. They are the producers of this podcast, and they run all of the marketing for all of my companies. Check them out at imprint-digital.com.
Yeah. So that group of leaders were the folks that really helped us to identify 4 core areas of service. And they said, we have better awareness and we have greater support in our outreach, and we had youth activities every single month, because it's not just the activity. The youth activities provide opportunity for therapy. They provide opportunity to discuss. It's phenomenal. So there's a lot more to it than as simple as these 4 core services sound, but we identified those and we founded the organization on those with, of course, knowing emergency funding would be just a game changer when it came to services. But the bigger issue I noticed was none of these leaders knew each other. Yeah. They weren't aware. They seemed very guarded. It wasn't a open forum.
Well, and we were talking about just kind of offline before we started recording the competitiveness between organizations. You would think, hey, here's 10 organizations in northern Colorado, in Larimer County, right, that want to help kids, but they're going after donor contribution, right? Yeah. So there's this, we don't want to share too much of what we do or who our book of donors is. So it's like we're all trying to help together, but
I think that's
creating
something,
these walls and silos.
Absolutely, Matt. And I think that's an important piece, and it's one I've been working on for 30 years, which is, a rising tide lifts all boats. We're gonna work better. We're gonna have better services if we work together. But there is historically there really was this mindset of lack. There was this mindset of competitive. We're all going after the very tiny slice of the pie of donations, grants, and fundraising dollars. Yeah. And so if you're getting that, I'm not getting that. And so what happened was and I realized this in the meeting, was kind of that was the second aha moment was we're not going to be able to, we could have all the money in the world towards these things, but if we're not working together collaboratively, we're not going to provide the best services. We're not going to provide the best continuum of services. No agency does everything. That's why we need one another. We're working with children in different issues, different ages, different circumstances, different trauma. So I realized at that moment the most important thing we would do, in addition to these core services, even probably more so, was going to be how do we unite the nonprofit community in child protection and child care services so that we can see that no child is forgotten. So that was a moment. And they really drove it home at the end of it because we got done with this whole long, awkward meeting.
Had to be awkward, right? Because this has never been heard of.
No, they were
or
excited
brought
to
up.
brainstorm.
Yeah.
Like that was the fun part, right? What can we do? But this concept of everybody sitting in a room doing it together, we see a lot more of it now. But that just didn't happen 30 years ago. Right. Everybody was kind of an island to themselves. Yeah. And I said, well, what I really want to see then is how do we all work together? And they really kind of drove the point home because they said to me, even if you're going to, we need these services. This would be a game changer. It would allow us to make sure that all our children are provided for. We could really reach that much further. But if you're going to be another nonprofit that's competing with us for this finite slice of the pie of donation grants and fundraising dollars, we're not so sure we want it. And that really stuck a pin in the issue of competitive mindset, that we would actually say, I'd rather not have the services I need than potentially have it impact the services I provide.
Yeah, that's crazy. So how did you break through that challenge, that struggle?
And I'd say that was the second God moment, the thing that came out of my mouth that I didn't plan on, similar to the meeting at Child Protection, was I said, okay, I get it. I get the problem, but I get how important collaborating is if we're really going to provide these services. And I said, look, we got to create a way that we can all play nice in the sandbox, or we're not going to be able to accomplish these things. I said, what if we could create a way that 100% of what we received in donations goes to these direct core services, so that you're not really competing with this. This is resources you have access to provide for your children.
All of you.
Yeah, everybody collectively. If we could do that, and you think about that question, it's unheard of. I mean, nonprofits have administrative costs, they have salaries, they have overhead.
All of them,
just like any other business. That's just what it takes to keep your doors open for any a sustainable period of time. So that's not been heard. And say, what if we give 100% of everything we get? Would you all agree to play nice in the sandbox? Could we create a collaborative network of services? And they all kind of laughed at me a little bit, and they said, sure, Craig, if you can do that.
You go right ahead.
Yeah, you can do that. Well, we're in, So that was, I walked out of there and I said, okay, how the hell am I going to do that? And that was that next call put on my heart is, okay, now we need to create a way that we're not just providing another service, but we're creating a way that we're really creating a community involvement in this issue. It's not just the nonprofits' jobs; it's our entire community's job, and that was really what started the process of creating the private social partnership that we're known for today. Yeah. And to anyone listening that's unfamiliar, we created a separate entity that is basically a cause marketing nonprofit, and we went out to all of the media out there, and we said, would you help us to market and promote businesses that care about kids? Would you help put the word out there that there's businesses that want to invest in making a difference in our community, uniting the nonprofit community and providing for these unmet needs? And tremendously, we just got a great response from media partners, from radio and print, and anyone that was out there 30 years ago that could help us do that. And then we went out to the business community. As you know, I mean, you've been a member of Realities for Children for a very long time, and we're now nearly 270 local businesses that are members, and it's the business members that they pay monthly membership dues. They receive marketing, advertising, positive name association, community appeal, a direct call to action to do business with you when you need the services. But what makes it amazing is that it's those dollars that underwrite all the administrative costs of the charity. And that is the game changer, because now we run a charity that has no administrative overhead costs. So 100% of every dollar donated goes to direct services for our children. We eliminate the competitive elements, and we create a collaborative network that can make sure no child's forgotten.
Was that from day one that you came up with that idea? So, I mean, you're leaving that meeting, hey, 100% distribution model. Sure, Craig, go do your thing. Did that take a lot of thinking? Did you have people that contributed to that idea? Like, how did that come about?
Yeah, no, it wasn't immediate. I immediately walked out of the go, what did I just say?
Commit to, right? Like, oh, there we go. Saying things again.
Which was, I don't mind problem solving. You talk about, the general art of leadership. And I think leadership is really about identifying areas that need to be addressed and then addressing them and how we do it. And one of my favorite sayings is there's no limit to what you can accomplish if you don't care who gets the credit.
Yes.
And I believe in that. I think, how do we figure out how we serve? How do we reach further? How do we do more? And how do we keep our finger on the pulse of what the needs are so we can be the very best at what we do? So that's a big focus. But I left that meeting having no idea how I was going to do that. I literally came out, and I'd like to say that I'm a business genius and I thought up this whole thing, but that's not it at all. And I continue to say this is calling. I continue to see God's hand in the work that we do, and I try to do my best to listen and to follow. And I knew we would of course have overhead and administrative costs and everything else, but we had to figure out another way to pay for it. And the private social partnership, by bringing in the business community along with the human services community, working together was just was one of those really aha moments. You go like, that's what we need. We don't. Yeah. And I think part of the mindset historically was businesses don't care about helping the community or helping kids. They care about making money. And what I learned is that's not the case at all. Businesses, of course, have to make money. They have to run their business. They have to be successful, pay their employees, or that part of this community what they do. But if they're given an easy way or a way that fits within their model of business to make a difference, most businesses want to make it part of their business to make a difference. And so that just made it that much stronger. We've taken now just one population of nonprofits and we've added the entire business community. And in doing that, we've added another sector, which is the community at large. Yeah. And that's a whole nother conversation. But it just opens up this great partnership that invites a way for everybody to get involved to help these children when they need it most.
When you've got that double-sided, like as a business owner, right? It's like you're contributing to the community, you're caring for others, you're helping the cause, and you have an event like every day, right? You do how many hundreds of events now per year? I mean, there's always a way. You can't be a member of Realities and not get plugged in somehow get business out of that. Yeah,
and that's the goal, right? I mean, the more successful a business is, the more they can do in our community. And of course, our goal is the businesses that are invested in making a difference, we want them to be successful. Now, there was pushback on that at the beginning. I mean, the concept had never been broached to a business leader to say, hey, you own, M&E Painting. And the concept of saying, you can have a marketing benefit to you. And I speak to the reason it was a marketing benefit was that we didn't want to compete with that finite slice of the pie. This is a totally different slice of the budget. And you're going to spend marketing and advertising. If we can do in a way that's helping kids and giving you that positive name association and community appeal, and you're going to, that really appeals to a lot of people.
Your first business meeting. So do you remember who the first person or company was that you pitched this to, and what did they say? I'm just curious.
I do remember the very first one. I realized that, I'd considered myself a pretty thick-skinned guy. I worked in child protection all these years. I'd done all that, and I thought, okay, I'm pretty tough, but I'm not a salesperson. And I remember just that feeling of going in and saying, this is an amazing thing. We're going to change the world. We're going to change lives. This is all you need to do to be part of this. And you got to remember, there's no track record. It's different now, 29 years later, to talk to a business leader and say, this could be great and show them what we're doing. But this was an idea. This was a concept. I was pitching, not only was it an unproven idea or concept, but you're the very first person I'm talking to. And I do remember, unfortunately, I did talk to somebody that was a great supporter of mine. He's since passed. His name was Harv Nesbitt, and he became the very first member of Realities for Children back then. He was a real estate agent, just a great guy, and had a great heart. But that was my safe meeting, right? The other meetings, I'd have a meeting and I'd say, no, I don't want to do that, and I'd almost feel sick to my stomach. I realized I don't think I have the skin for this. This is
hard
tough.
To take those first couple.
Yeah. I wouldn't get at that. And I was so passionate about the cause that I couldn't understand why everybody didn't want to do it. Yep. And I had to just learn, you've got to find that right fit. There's a lot of ways people want to get involved and a lot of good things to do. And this is my heart and my call, but it's not everybody's. And I want people to find that right fit. That's ultimately the goal, right? Have everybody find that passion in their life and pursue it.
So apart from Harv, who's like he's a friend of yours, you know he's going to support, right? You're getting that rejection. Who is the other first, or who are the first couple of businesses that really bought into the concept and gave you that affirmation?
And some of them are still with us. I mean, we have businesses. I would speak to Exodus Moving and Storage, for example. I went out and spoke to Elon. He just started.
Yeah, great guy.
I think he's been a member. I want to say 27, 28 years. He would have been one of those early folks, and those affirmations were huge. Again, like I said, I'm not a salesperson. I'm trained to be a counselor and a therapist, and my goal is to help children. And so I can't speak to, and I'm sure there's other businesses out there that are much more astute at all of this, but a few affirmations go a long way, and a few bits of kindness are huge. And I look back at those early days, and that's why we celebrate. Even today, you were at our Pinwheel Gala a couple weeks ago, and we celebrate those leaders, those pioneers, those 20+ year businesses that stepped in and said, let's do something. Let's do something better.
So whether you've got somebody that's, just launching a nonprofit, a business, I mean, sometimes we forget, right? We sit here 20, 30 years into the journey, business is flowing, we've got our team, everything we've built is operating, right? But we forget those early days. But if you've got somebody that's just early on in that journey, and like, hey, their mom or their brother or their friend bought into it, but then you just, when you can't see, why can't you see what I see?
Yeah.
What would you tell them? What would you tell Craig from close to 30 years ago? It's hard. Those first years are hard. Man.
They are hard. Yeah. And that's where I can't speak to enough about the angels in our life, the people that say, and obviously we saw the rewards on some of the services we provided for children as a result of that. And that's always going to be a driving thing for me. And I think that's first and foremost. And of course, being faithful and surrendering to a lot of those personal things and be able to follow that this is where I'm supposed to be. This is what we're supposed to be doing. How do we keep doing it? But I think that the children I think about, that was probably a huge part. But then those people, like I say, those angels, those people that were just put in that place to say, you're doing good, keep it up. Yeah. We're gonna reach further. And to imagine 29 years ago where we would be at a level of service now, where we're serving tens of thousands of children and connecting a community in a really beautiful way, and looking at some of those pieces is huge. But I can tell you one of the first service club meetings I went to speak at.
Yeah.
And that was an interesting one. It was kind of that first eye-opener about that. I was in a meeting, and I thought, I should go speak to, it was a service club of businesses, they're doing good things in the community. I thought, this would be a great place. Why would I? This was exactly where I need to start. And I went in and I was sharing this idea, this concept. And boy, I was not expecting opposition. I wasn't expecting somebody to be negative. I almost had a heckler in the group. And he said, "Oh, that'll never work," or businesses shouldn't benefit from helping kids. And I remember my responses to that, thinking, "What an interesting thought." I said, "You haven't seen what I've seen. Then you haven't seen how many children are in need of support. I don't think that's the problem. I think businesses that are invested in our community should benefit, so they can continue to invest more." And then it just kind of kept coming. And finally, his last question to me, and when one person is kind of being on the attack, you feel like the entire room thinks that.
Oh, yeah.
And I was like, gosh, I am not in a friendly place. And he asked, last question he asked me, he said, "How many children do you think this idea will help anyways?" And my response, and I don't know where some of these responses come from because they're not thought out in advance. And I just said, I don't know. I said, I have no idea how many children we can help. Yeah. I said, but why don't you tell me how many children that face abuse and neglect and domestic violence lives we would need to change for your support? And that's what I'll shoot for. And the rest of the groom stood up and applauded. And I realized it was just the one guy.
Yeah.
And everybody else was, no, this makes sense. And now if you'd have taken that defeat, if you'd taken that aggressiveness, we wouldn't be serving tens of thousands of children and seeing the impacts that we can have. So I think it's important to stay on task.
Well, and that's so huge, right? Because you have like the angels and the supporters, no matter what, right? And then you have your general population. You're going to win some, lose some. And then you just have the a-holes, the hecklers, the ones that are just going to beat it down and cut you down no matter what. And it's a reflection on him.
Yeah.
But those seem to be the loudest sometimes.
They do. And I think some of my favorite people, because they're the opportunity to share and to witness, to invite them and get them educated and get them involved. And some of our greatest supporters were maybe some of our some of the biggest doubters in the beginning. And so I think that can be powerful. I think it can also be, very hard. I remember early on and even in our relationship, because I'm just a nice guy that's trying to help kids, and having any negativity was weird for me. And you were very outspoken. So, that happens. You can't let that stuff get under your skin like that. You got to keep on fighting the good fight. So I appreciate that from you. You were one of those folks, and so many people, really were that hard. But I think it's human nature to listen to the negative, the one negative, and not the 99 supporters sometimes.
And then as you start growing and you start getting traction and things are moving forward, you'll just get more of that, right? Like I always tell people, you get a hater, you get somebody, talking trash about you. I remember I came across a gentleman and he started saying some negative things, but I'm like, I'm bought in, so you better watch what you say about my boy Greg. We're going to talk a little bit more. But he raised an objection, and I'm like, hey, this is what he said, and this is years ago. You're like, well, here's what we do. That's not true. I'm like, yeah, I know where that's coming from, because it was somebody with that competitive, scarce mindset, right? Yeah, because he was in the nonprofit field. But it's just interesting. Yeah,
it's unfortunate because those kind of mentality can hurt. It hurts children, it hurts other people. But I think that questions are good. I think getting people involved, and I think if people find that passion, I think the greatest legacy we're going to leave in life is the hearts that we light on fire for service. It's not going to be exactly what we do. It's the people that we get involved to be making a difference. And I think we need friends. We need friends that are there to support us when it's feeling challenging. But I think even sometimes people that have those questions or concerns are very valuable too, because they help us grow stronger. They help us to address areas of concern and grow.
And there's a difference when the person bringing up whatever they're bringing up, right? Like it kind of hits you in the gut, and they have a concern, a question, but they want your well-being. Like they're thinking about your well-being, and they want you to do well. Versus the others, they're just heckling. They're just being loud. There's no benefit in really engaging with somebody that won't listen to your perspective.
No, and I feel like I think that's very true. And I think that's great advice for young people that are starting, whether it's a business or a service side or whatever that is, to keep that in mind. What are the priorities? What's the thing to focus on? Because I think we can learn from those challenges. I know we can. But at the same time, I'm at the stage where I'm like, look, I'm really too busy doing these things to help children and to make sure we can keep evolving with what the need is out there to get distracted by that. I mean, I want to focus on the good. I want to focus on how do we do better. But I also want to pay attention to this because I think it's important. This grows as a community, and what we do, the stronger we are as a community, we call the Realities for Children and Family, whether that's volunteers or donors or business members or partner agencies or all the folks that get involved in so many ways that allow us to do. We want to open that door and invite everybody to be a part of it.
It's so cool though. I was thinking about this. I was talking to Emily about this after the galas. I said, you've been doing this so long and have impacted so many people that there's children who were children 10, 15 years ago, received your services and what you do, and then have now come back to speak and be a part of and contribute to the organization. So are there any stories you can think of people where you can openly share, right? Yeah. That, because I'm thinking of one who's pretty involved in the community now. And I mean, he's a professional in one of the same professions I'm in, right? Yeah. And he was originally he's been on both sides of the coin. So
well, we have so many. It is cool. Yeah. I got to be honest, and it's the gray hair jokes aside, I've become kind of grandpa to a lot of my our kids.
Own the hair. He looks good, Joey, right? Joey, you're looking at him. Is he looking good on the camera?
Absolutely. He's got the gray flow.
Yeah, got the flow going. Yeah, no, it's fun because you're right. I've been doing this a very long time, even prior to starting Realities for Children. So children that we started working with 29, 30 years ago, I got kids in their 40s, that are still part of what we do. And yes, there's great stories of success, as the young man that you're referencing. There's great stories of heartbreak and challenge and despair. And then there's just the journey of life that we get to continue to be a part of. And I've got, if I were to speak to one story, she was actually my last case in child protection services before I founded Realities for Children. She was 3 years old when we started. She's now 34 years old, and she has 2 children, doing well. Really, just an amazing young woman. But we were there for her every step of the way from the moment she entered. I was actually the caseworker that placed her and her siblings, and actually, unfortunately, in multiple foster homes just because of availability, what we could do. I was there for, the moving of different foster homes that were required, there for support services through Realities for Children. I was there for her termination of parental rights. I was there for the day of her adoption. I was at her high school graduation. And these are our kids. And I was there for her wedding. And she invited Molly and I to her wedding. And we want to sit in the back. I was just honored that she would invite us, because not everyone wants it. There's part of it wants to put that past behind them. Yeah. And so we were sitting there, and she walked up to us afterwards at the reception, and she goes, there's nobody at this wedding that has known me as long as you have. Yeah. And so we try to be part of those children's lives. Our philosophy to healing is, we want to be there for the emergency service at the spear's head of what we're dealing with, but we also want to be there through the healing process. And then we want to be there at the end of breaking the cycle and seeing them, providing post-emancipation support, and really being part of that, creating that family for these kids. And I love that so many of our kids will bring their children by. And, I get to be Grandpa Craig.
You're Grandpa Craig. You got to own it, man.
Yeah,
Love it.
I do.
So if a business is listening to this, how can they get involved? Obviously, they can become a business member, but that's not the only way they can become involved. Like, I was an ambassador. You have an ambassador team. You've got just volunteers, right? You probably receive tens of thousands of hours of just people giving their time and their talents.
Yeah, we had over 1,200 volunteer positions filled last year. I think it was last year's hours were over 7,000 volunteer hours. And so certainly, again, I like to try to way, Matt, we can open a door for everybody to get involved, everybody to make a difference. So if you're a business owner and you want to learn about business membership, you can give us a call. Shelley will be happy to tell you all about what it is to be a member. And we've worked really hard with all of our media partners that we provide a lot of visibility. It's a lot of connectivity in the business community. Tomorrow we'll be hosting we do a monthly networking lunch. These sell out every month, and it's usually 65 business leaders all in one room. And it's a great way to grow businesses. And the marketing we put out there, our messaging is, whenever you need the services of any of our business members, choose to do business with them. So meaning, no one's going to get their house painted to help an abused child. They're getting their house painted because they need their house painted. Our message is, when you do need your house painted, do it with M&E. Do it with a business that's helping kids in our community versus one that isn't. If that what you think is important in our community. So a lot of ways to do a membership, sponsorship. We run some very large events. We need event sponsors all the time. We have our, we have golf tournament. We have the gala. We have run the world's largest motorcycle poker run. So
Can't forget about you, like the motorcycles. Yep.
Night lights, the big 50-foot tree out front of the First Presbyterian. So we're always looking for sponsors. We're always looking for, obviously, donors are the lifeblood of what we do. And thanks to our business members, they can know two things. One, 100% of that money goes to direct services and programs for children. And it's not serving one agency. It's serving an entire demographic of abused and at-risk kids. So you're right. What I like to say is there's a way for everybody to get involved if that's what they want to do.
Well, and you've got a really cool app. I mean, just if somebody in the community has a couch that they want to get rid of, right? You have the
Kind Connect
app where I've got it. Somebody needs it. They'll coordinate a volunteer to go hook that up.
Yeah.
Which is really cool.
Yeah, and that speaks to some of the growth of other services that we've added over the years since that very first meeting. Item distributions, we provided item distributions to over 15,000 children last year. And so the app, kindconnect.org, it's RFC, RFC as in Realities for Children, kindconnect.org. You can go in there and sign up as a donor. And then all of our caseworkers, all of our partners have the ability, if they have a child put in a placement and they need it's a stroller, it's a this, it's a that, and you might have that sitting in your basement, your kids have outgrown, you can just say, I got it. We have a background check volunteers who will pick it up and deliver it straight to those families.
Yeah, so cool. Cool.
A lot of fun stuff.
So we've gotten to know each other, apart from the business world personally, right? Yeah. So me and Emily and you and Molly, we go hang out. We always have a blast together. But I specifically remember, I want to share this story, is when I was living over in Windsor, you're like, hey man, I just want to pop over. And this is when you were drinking a little bit of whiskey. We'll have whiskey from time to time, right? Mostly coffee.
Enjoy a good bit of whiskey. A lot of coffee today.
We may have had a whiskey, but you bring over a little bit of whiskey. We sit on the back porch, if you remember this, over in Windsor, and you're like, hey, haven't really told anybody about this, but I've kind of got this lead. I've got this beat on this land, over here in North Fort Collins, and here's this vision. That's going to be like $2 million, or maybe it's $1 million
for the land. Yeah.
Yeah. Like, we're literally sitting there around the holidays.
Sounds about right.
And you shared this with me.
Yeah.
And well, here's what it's going to take. And here's the plan. I'm like, okay, like let's do that. And then you did it. And then a year later, right?
Yeah.
18 months, sat down and, home base. So talk a little bit about the home base. And then I really want to have you share about Sanctuary. It's kind of the same thing,
Yeah,
right? That
it
vision right
is.
now.
Yeah, thanks for asking about that. Yeah, so you're absolutely right. It was I think one of the things that allows us, and what I think is kind of a responsibility. We talk about our philosophy of support for these kids: emergency services, healing support, breaking the cycle. So those are the three legs of service that really everything we do provides for. But we also have a unique perspective, and oftentimes I'll even talk to Department of Human Services. We work with 30, 40 organizations that we get a lot of feedback from. So we're able to hear, even when we went through pandemic or we go through major recessions, how does our different administrations, how does that affect the resources, the services, the service needs of at-risk children in our community? So we're kind of we get a lot of data, we get a lot of information, and we're able to respond to that. And each year we'll meet with all of our executive directors, all the agencies we partner with, government organizations, and we identify what are some of the biggest areas of struggle, because you can't assume what was 29 years ago is still the only things, and those things change. They ebb and flow, they grow, and a good organization is dynamic and is able to move and adjust to those is what I believe. And so we talked to all of our agencies, and I think at that time we had 31 organizations, and 28 of them identified one of the biggest problems that they're having in providing their services was facility space. As our community continues to grow, it's harder and harder to find safe, confidential, affordable space for their larger programs. And I also realized that not all these agencies needed all the space all the time, but we all needed the space some of the time.
Yep.
And so instead of having 28 different capital campaigns, so what if we create one unified facility, which we call the Realities for Children Home Base? That's our youth activities campus, that all organizations would have access to for their services and programs and could meet those needs. It could be safe. It's a non-institutionalized venue. A lot of these kids get very institutionalized. They're always going into the department or whatever. And so we identified that need. And I think that time that you and I sat down and we were talking about it, it was very clear that there was a need out there. And I felt very called that we're in the position to meet that need. So we reached out. It was amazingly blessed. We had, I think we announced it that we were going to do it in our 2016 gala. And we had moved in. Yeah. I mean, it was basically from concept to completion to fully funded, a 4-acre campus that provided all of these things within less than 18 months. Yeah. Which was amazing, and it's just really unheard of with change of use and all the things you have to go through. But and to this day, we've hosted now, so that we opened up that in 2017, late 2017. Since then, we've hosted over 25,000 children and guardians at this facility, and as a private, we have a child care area, we have an agency hall for services programs, that sort of thing. We have a private park, playground, distribution center, and all of those things are just so valuable because people don't think about the challenges of getting access to a park if you're a grandparent raising a grandchild or you're dealing with restraining orders. And so to have a private park, private playground, the distribution center, the areas for meeting that kids can be part of it as well has really been a game changer for a lot of services. So that was the birth of the Realities for Children Home Base, and it really became our sixth core service, which is providing free facility space. So all of those children, all those agencies, it doesn't cost them a thing. And it's free space for our programs and the resources that we do, and it's just been wonderful.
And you're not stopping there.
No.
Because you came back, right, but year and a half, maybe 2 years ago. I can't remember when.
About 18 months ago.
About 18 months.
Yeah.
You popped in here, and it was just coffee this time. It was right over here. It was just right over in the conference room. You're like, hey, so I've got a beat on this next piece of property, and there's this house there, and share that, because you're literally in the trenches of that campaign.
We are.
Seeing that through. And that's super cool.
It is really exciting. And I think it's, I appreciate you bringing it up because I love being able to share what we're witnessing and what we're doing with that. And it really is, like the first time it was, this is what the need is. Let's see what's out there. And so that's where we built the home base campus where we're at now. This was the same sort of thing. This was a post-pandemic, what we were watching, what's happening, what's going on, where are the greatest needs and changes that are happening. And sadly, we're dealing with just huge spikes in high trauma cases, gunshot cases, and sadly sexual assault cases that we're dealing with. And we were going like, okay, what are we really witnessing? And so we saw in Fort Collins, we saw 26 in 2 years, we saw a 26% increase in sexual assault crimes against children. We're seeing an increase of 9 times in child exploitation, online exploitation, those sorts of things, and just really looking at what are the mental health impacts of this. These are the issues we're seeing. The sexual assault on a child, high trauma situations that were just really escalated, and I think a lot of people don't understand how that the pandemic really impacted a lot of our work. We were able to adjust quickly to that, but there's been a lot of changes in the last 5 years in our community with growth and everything else that's going on, and so we were made very aware of those issues, and even more so aware of the mental health impact on our children. We're seeing 33% of sexual assault survivors or sexual abuse survivors are seeing contemplating suicide. They're 10 times more likely to become heavy drug dependent. We're just up to 40% of the children survivors and even adult survivors struggle to function at work or school. And so these are having huge impacts on our children. And so our job is to identify these changing and growing needs and how do we address them.
If you've got junk in your life or business that you need removed, reach out to one of our sponsors, Hulk Addicts. They are a full-service junk removal company, and they'll be able to take care of you at your home or your business to get rid of whatever you don't want. Check them out at hulkaddictsjunk.com. As a small business owner, one of the things we will always need to address is a space to run our business. If you're looking to do a small tenant finish, maybe even build a building from the ground up, you've got to reach out to one of our sponsors, Mendel Construction. They are a full-service commercial contractor that can take care of your business needs to build the space and place of your dreams to run your business. Check them out at mendelandcompany.com. If you're a Christian small business owner, you have to check out one of our sponsors, the Foundry Advisory. They are a Christian peer advisory community here in Northern Colorado and the Front Range that is designed to give you encouragement, support, and insight to grow your business with other like-minded Christian business owners. Not only are they a sponsor and a partner of this podcast, but I'm also a member of their community. Check them out at thefoundryadvisory.com.
And so we of course, go to our partners that work with that. SAVA, you might be familiar with their sexual assault victims advocacy, wonderful program, provide great services. And other organizations identifying, part of the problem is we see even kids that are brave enough to start this, the real world impediments that stop them from continuing. They're saying we see an over 70, 80% fail rate of children that start the therapy that can't continue to get it. And that's where we identified there's something we can do. And when this land next to us, another 4 acres, became available, we identified that as going to be dedicated to a healing sanctuary for high trauma sexual assault survivors for children. And it's just got tremendous traction, and I think it's going to be the next great big game changer and blessing in our community.
Now, where are you at with that project? Because you are raising, was it $4 million?
With the
right about
$5.5 million is the campaign, and we, as you said, spoken to you about that need, and then that land become available, and we said that's exactly what. And it happens to be the 4 acres that connects to our existing 4-acre campus, so it couldn't have been better. And where we're located is right in the center of Larimer County. So we announced it actually just about a year ago that we were trying to reach this, what I consider to be a pretty scary goal. $5.5 million is a lot, but it's going to provide a lot. It's going to be providing a beautiful sanctuary for kids surrounded by nature, the healing elements of nature with waterways, private pond, a therapy center designed by therapists from the ground up for therapy gardens. We're going to have a therapy farm there with small animals. We have the therapy dogs that go out all the time for our kids. So having something like that, they can interact. We see how powerful that is. And then we're building the Inspiration Center that will house a lot of our trauma-informed programs that these children need. And with that, providing a wraparound care support. That means if your issue from getting the therapy is transportation, we'll take care of that. If your issue is, food insecurities or whatever those things are that are stopping you from continuing to get what you need to get the care you need to heal, we're going to make sure that we're answering that. So we took on a pretty big project, and I thought $5.5 million was a daunting request on that. And A year later, like I said, we just it was this month a year ago we announced it, and right now we're at about $4.5 million in funds raised and pledged to this campaign.
Amazing.
So we're getting there.
You're gonna get it. You're gonna hit it.
I'm feeling and I'm excited to be able to get this up and running and providing for our kids as quickly as possible. But anyone who wants to learn more about the Realities for Children Healing Sanctuary, it's on our website. And they can go there and see it and learn about it.
When do you expect that to be done and just in use? And
I'd like it to be done and in use now. I know the need is immediate, so that's why I've been pushing so hard. And like I shared with you, it's almost like another full-time job doing a project like that. But it is. We've just seen that same affirmation that we talked about from 29 years ago. When you're undertaking a task that seems overwhelming, there are leaders and people that just step up, that just fortify you. And I'm not doing this alone. We have a tremendous board, our membership base, our ambassadors. We have so much more support now to make this happen that it's exciting. So to answer your question, I'd like to see at least parts of it available. If all goes well with the permits and processing and building and fundraising, even before the end of next year, I'd like to see that available, which would be, it's a pretty aggressive timeline, but I'm excited to see that happen.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
One thing I'm curious about, and I'm thinking of everybody that works in the kind of field that you do. So this huge cause, you're seeing a lot of kids, a lot of cases, a lot of trauma, right? So just how do you deal with that? Like, because you get these emergency fund requests, they ring your phone, right here, wherever your phone is. And I mean, we sit down, have offline conversations, like that takes a toll. So just anybody listening that's in that kind of space, where they're dealing with and seeing trauma and they're firsthand, responding to that. What are some things that you do just to unplug, have good mental health?
Yeah, it's a great, I mean, and it's different for everybody, I think. And I think the first thing is being aware it does take a toll. Last year, so 2023, we responded to and provided emergency support services for 5,116 children. That's averaging about, I think, if you did it on a daily basis, that averages about 14 children every single day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. That's a lot of need. And our process for handling that, we were able to respond within 60 minutes of an emergency request, that we can really be there when our kids need us most. And I think, like I mentioned earlier, our goal with that is we want to make sure all of the resources are utilized first. We're not a quick, easy alternative. We're the last stop. We want to make sure we are that safety net when no other resources are there. So there's a timeliness to it. There's an immediacy to it. But to your question, there's certainly the heart to it. How does that affect your spirit and your soul and who you are? And to any of the counselors, therapists, caseworkers that are out there, even frontline workers with different nonprofits that work with these families. First, I'll say nobody goes into this field because they don't have a heart of gold. They really want to help. They really want to change. That also makes us more susceptible to the heartache of loss and seeing families and kids struggle. And that can really hurt people. And I've seen that. Like I said, we see it in the burnout rate. We see it in the turnover rate. We see it in the mental health of providers. And I think the key is finding what is it that helps you to heal? What is it that helps you to recover? And as a guy, I did the great, originally classic stuff of like, I'm just going to put that over here and worry about it later. And
that brush it under the rug thing? Do you do that too?
That you find out that doesn't work, because the best metaphor I've put to it is if your spirit or your soul is a filter, like in a furnace, every one of those stories, every one of those challenges, every one of those cases is feeding through you. And eventually that filter is going to get clogged up. It's going to feel that. And so, to anyone who's working in this field that is struggling with that, you really need to not stuff it. You need to clean that filter, and you need to figure out for you, what does that look like? For me, it's being in nature. Talk about the healing power of nature, getting up in the mountains, taking those hikes, going fishing, riding the motorcycle, getting opportunity, and of course, time with family and people that care about you, being surrounded by people who care, and then being able to be vulnerable enough to share those where your heart's at, because none of us can do this alone. We need to be, I don't mean this field, I mean in this planet. We need to realize that everybody's carrying a challenge. Everybody's got a struggle they're facing, and try to be the kindest people we can be. Because, I heard something the other day. It said something like, if you're not feeling like you're getting the goodness in your life that you need right now, maybe it's because you need to be the goodness in somebody else's life. And I think we need to if we're all worrying about everybody else, if we're all taking care of each other, if we're working to be that kindness, I believe we're not only going to be providing for the children in need and families in need and the work that I've dedicated my life to, but we're just going to be a better community. We're going to be better as a culture. We're going to be better people, and we're going to feel better. Because right now we're facing so many divisive things, and in a time that we've never, in the history of our country, had to face before. So I just want to preach kindness. I want to preach self-care, and take a look at how do we help others going through difficult times. See those things, reach out to people when you can. I always try to be aware, but I'm always thankful for the people that see that in me too, and go, hey, how you doing? And really
doing okay.
Yeah.
Well, we've had some great conversations. Yeah. I think we've both had great conversations with each other when we're not doing okay.
Yeah.
That's okay to not be doing okay.
It is. It's not only okay, it's the reality. Yeah. It's a reality of being on this planet. There will be challenges, there will be heartbreaks, there will be hardship. And what I love about the Realities for Children family is we all have our different dreams, our different paths, the things we want that are important to us. But when you have a family that shares at least one thing in common, and in our case, it's wanting to make the world a better place through one child at a time, that's a family that you can surround yourself with good energy. And I think it's absolutely necessary. And I challenge people to go out and get outside of your comfort zone. Maybe it's that one person that you see that you really would normally just get angry at because they're doing it. Maybe you just go like, "Are you all right?" And you'd be surprised. People are struggling, and I think. We need to be aware of that for everybody.
That question, when it's been asked to me with sincerity and curiosity, like, "Are you doing okay?"
Yeah,
it opens up the door, especially when I'm not, right, or we're not doing okay. Just asking that and being attentive to that is huge.
Amen. I think I've seen that I see that in the. I wouldn't even no longer even state with men have historically struggled with being able to be vulnerable and open up. But I think in the business community too, we surround ourselves with so many people that, gosh, I don't want to show weakness. I don't want to show that I'm struggling. I don't want to show that I don't know what I'm doing. I mean, I need good people around me all the time because I'm tackling issues and challenges and tasks that are far beyond my ability individually. I mean, so I think we've been trained to not share when we're struggling, versus be honest about that. And of course, do that with people you trust, that you can count on. But I think it's important.
Well, man, you and I could have an entire other podcast episode about that.
Yeah.
Just about for men. Just we don't do that enough, and we don't know how to do that. And it's just an interesting place to navigate the first time you do, Yeah. But it's so needed. It's so needed.
Yeah, I think so. And I think if you can go into life thinking that is that everybody's facing a battle. Everybody has a challenge in their life right now. Yep. Some are bigger than some are, but at the end of the day, we're on this planet together. How do we work together? And that's really a lot of what the basis of Realities for Children is. How do we come together as a community? How do we engage in a way that isn't divisive, pushing away competitive mindset, lack mindset? How do we come in a way it's like, hey, I know if I'm caring for you and you're caring for me, I don't need to worry about me. If we're looking at how we can collectively serve and address a problem in our community, we can make that better. We can improve that. So I think that's the underlying goal of what we do at Realities. We try to witness that, and I think personally as well, that's what we want to be doing out there.
Craig, man, thanks for spending time today, coming out, having some coffee, sharing your story.
Yeah, right on. Thanks for having me.
Man, we are going to wrap up, and we wrap up the episodes, all of them, same way. You grabbed your favorite color off the wall out there, and you've got a sentence that you want to leave with the world when you leave it. What did you write down?
I have a belief in whatever you do today, good, bad, or ugly. What you do this today, you've traded a day of your life for it, and that's not a philosophy. That's not a theory. That's a fact. Whatever you did today, you traded a life of your day for it. Traded a day of your life for it. And we don't know how many days we got in the life bank. We don't know how many of those things we have to do. So my goal each day when I start, and my advice and what I'd love to leave behind is, that each of us work to make today a great trade. If we can have every day can be a good trade, then we're in the right place.
Craig Secher, that's a wrap.
Thanks for having me, man.
Thanks, sir.
Appreciate it.
Hey, thanks for tuning into this week's episode. Would you make sure to please like, comment, and subscribe to the channel here? And please share this episode with somebody whose life it will make better. Are you a faith-based father and you want to have the adventure of a lifetime with your son? You have to check out the father-son hike of a lifetime on the Camino de Santiago in Spain. June of 2025, I'm going to be taking a small group of fathers and sons over to Spain. We are going to spend 6 days, hike 70 miles, have some of Spain's most amazing cuisines, see some of the most beautiful places and spaces, but most importantly, spend time together bonding with our sons. If you're interested in this adventure, check out mattshoup.com. When you get to the website, click the Gentle Art of Leadership button and hover down to the Father-Son Hike of a Lifetime.